Hello, and I've done this as a video. As mentioned, I do a lot of this anyway. It's also way quicker to explain things so you have a record, so hoping that's okay with you. The issue of software automation for us, as I mentioned, was that we're a practice focusing very much on IT solutions and automation accounting software. So our issue would be that we're using a package that will grow and become robust over time, which I'm pretty confident with Sage that that's the case, so that our clients can effectively be given software where they can download information and automate their accounting. Effectively what we're doing is trying to teach people how to do their own books with the minimum amount of time and the minimum cost, because there's minimum labour and there's maximum automation. That's us. We don't do BAS returns, we do very little bookkeeping. We're primarily a tax-based firm. We consult in tax, we design tax solutions for clients, and we just don't want to do any bookkeeping. Now, the issue for us with software automation is we need to have a product that we can promote. What we will probably do, and we have facilities here, we have a fairly large boardroom with video and internet access and screens where we do client seminars. We will be marketing this more widely, because you've got to look at what to market. Most accountancy practices simply market, we're good at tax and this and that. We market these type of solutions. So we'll be saying to people in the local area, are you spending a lot of time doing your accounts? Are you incurring a lot of costs? You need to look at and understand a system that allows you to automate very efficiently your accounting processes. And there'll be pricing in this, but that should be fine, because I don't think it'll be any more expensive than existing software. So that's the culture of the organisation that we're at in terms of what we're looking from the software. As mentioned to you, I am a little concerned, and I've been around a long time at this. I've been in this kind of IT area in tax for about 3 or 4 years now. A lot of resistance from accountants. That's my experience to high-end IT, and as I mentioned, very threatened by the concept of automation. Though I take your point that more and more accountants are coming around to the idea that it's inevitable. So that's the starting point for this. The key issue to automation in accounting software, that is the next level. The BankLink type product's out and about. We've been using that for many years, and it's been around for many years. To me, the next level is this reading OCR PDFs or documents straight into the account. So you get an email of an invoice, or you get posted an invoice, you scan it all in, you put it in a directory, you click a button, and what the software does is load it all up into the respective subledgers. To me, that's critical. You are wasting an awful lot of time if you've got to rekey in all your creditors. What's the point? So what happens is, the way I see it, is that you upload it. It then reads those statements, and I know you can do this because you can do it with PDFs already, by getting the data form export fields. Now that's a pre-designed PDF. You're going to be doing this from a scan, nevertheless. It then knows the fields to put it in. It's got the name of the customer, it's got the amount, it's got the GST, it's got all the details, so it puts it in a standard field. Now at that point it can go directly into a subledger, and I've seen this functionality in other programs in terms of what it's designed to do. And then you get a review screen. It says, we've looked at all the invoices you've put in, this is what's been uploaded, and it'll print out, or on the screen it'll say, look, this is the date, this is the amount, this is the details, this is what it's for, and this is the account. Or you can override any of those issues and edit, and click OK, and then it's in. You've now processed your creditor with minimum effort. Same with the accounts receivable, in the sense the OCR for accounts receivable is more about the fact that when you try and raise a debtor, it's clever. It's a bit like SBR reporting. It knows you've raised a debtor. It then says, well, look, this debtor you've raised accounts for in the past. These are the accounts you've raised. It may give a title, or it present you with a couple of old invoices and say, do you want to use any of those as a template and cut and paste the new information in or not? You can say yes or no. You can create a blank screen. I mean, this kind of functionality is very common in all sorts of software. But imagine if it's in a debtor system, because you then can just keep clicking on an old template and just adjust it. And you can do this already in products like Mile, but it's a pain because you have to set up a recurring function. You've got to find that recurring invoice. Why not just have it present, boom, every time you raise an invoice, give you a quick choice whether to accept it or not, and on you go. So effectively, to me that's the key, because all you're really saying is you don't need to process accounts payable, because you can automate it in, and you've got an automation system partially in place for accounts receivable. Bank statement automation is the allocation procedure. We've been through the memorisation, but you've got to get cleverer with that memorisation. So starting points, and this is some of the things that I've looked at in the past. The obvious is the BankLink functionality. The next level up, and I think you indicated this is possible, is that you can now allocate credits and debits from a bank statement directly to the subledger by putting in place certain memorization fields identifying the supplier, the amount, the date. And once again, what I assume it does is it says, you've received all these entries, we've allocated them to these debtors and creditors, is this correct or not? Gives you a choice to either to accept or reject. If you reject, you enter it manually because it puts it in suspense. If you accept, it does it automatically. Big time saver, very simple stuff in my view. The next issue with bank statement automation, of course, is the amount of data that you can access from the bank, so you can have much more clever parity checks. So, for example, you can design size of fields, the data fields. The more you can program it, because if you think about it as an accountant, you can set up these very easily. So, in other words, the software allows you to put those memorizations in place. That's what accountants do, because remember, what we're trying to do is automate our clients. We're still their accountant, so we're doing the high-end work, which is designing these memorization fields, and so we put it in place so it allocates most of the entries. Now BankLink does that already. I guess the issue with Sage is that you're moving towards a much more comprehensive allocation automation, because it can pick up subledgers and it's cleverer in what it can allocate, plant and equipment, size. It's more of a dashboard saying this is where everything's being allocated. Do you agree or don't you? It's still a huge leap forward from having to key everything. To me, this is critical for the opening solutions to true software automation. And I don't see it as hard. In my view, the technology for this is already all here. I'm still a little surprised why it seems to be appearing in certain packages and not others. So, as I mentioned, some softwares have one solution, another, but no one has a suite of them together. Attachment allocation is really important, and there's two parts to attachment at allocation, and that is there's the automation part and the manual part. To me, in any small business practice, those that are a little bit savvy, and we are trying to work with our small business clients who are a little bit IT orientated, we certainly provide support for all that. Then what you do is you've got your accounting system is your fundamental database. Imagine it, you've got all your debtors and creditors in there, you've got their emails, you've got their phone numbers and bits and pieces and your employees, and in addition to that, every time you receive or raise an invoice, it attaches to the transaction. So, for example, if you've got a creditor's invoice, the PDF or etc. will attach to that transaction. You click on the transaction, you see the invoice. Nothing new in this. A lot of software does it, I'm sure you're aware. But it's about automating that process. In other words, we spoke earlier about it actually putting the data in, then it brings the invoice with it, the PDF, and attaches it. So when you click on the line item in debtors or creditors, you see the information that's been entered into the, in this case, the Sage database, but you can click on an attachment and actually see the corresponding PDF, whatever it was, that created the transaction in the first place. It turns the accounting software into a fundamental client database, and from our point of view, extremely useful to be able to see all that. Now, how that then plays out with how you synchronize it into Handy Ledger, I'm not sure, but you can see the value of it in that you can use it as an attachment system. Now, again, in my view, a lot of clients are wanting to do this. It's all a bit new, but it's got to be automated. Again, nothing is functional if you have to do it yourself. Automation is the key. BAS automation and parity checking. Our basic view of the automation process, and we do this a little bit already, is that to really take it to the next level, having entered all the data in, and we've talked about automation there, you then have a series of parity checks built around the BAS. An example of this would be there are standard GST reconciliations that all accountants do. I'm sure if you look around you'll see them, where you put in opening balances and put the GST for the period, and it looks for the correctness of it, comparative checks, the size, it looks at purchases and sales, does it make sense? For example, if you've got $100,000 worth of sales, you should have about 10 grand's worth of GST, bits and pieces. Now, the parity checking and automation is that when the client then hits to do the BAS return, pushes the button and you produce these numbers, is actually trying to do some analysis. Accountants do this. We do a GST reconciliation. So the software is trying to do some basic analysis on behalf of the client to give them some warnings about some unusual looking amounts. For example, you seem to have GST seems to be missing on some transactions. Please review them because they don't look quite right, because there's GST on one type of transaction with one description. There's another transaction with the same description with no GST. Are you sure that's correct? Review. Or GST seems very high compared to last period. Review. Or GST seems very high compared to what the sales are. Review. Something like that. I mean, I know what all these things are. We do them. I can give you them all. Any accountant will give you them all quite quickly. Why can't you automate that? And what is the policy you have towards that type of automation? This is the higher end stuff, and it raises issues about, in my view, that's what we're trying to market. We're saying to clients, you can get some basic accountancy services automated in the software. That is, to me, a quantum leap that software can do. And why it is not happening, I'm not sure, because it doesn't seem that hard to me. We do it manually, and SharePoint and other programs allow you to swap data between shared files that effectively are doing the same thing. So to me, it's critical that Sage are moving towards developing these tools, because if we're not careful, what happens is we start pushing a program like Sage 1, and then we find that you're not going to do these things, and as a result, we then have to switch software midstream. That's what we're trying to avoid, finding the right provider that is set to try and develop these automation tools. I'm just showing you this as part of your comments about working with accountants, and it will probably hopefully give you some idea that we are pretty active in this space. I clearly don't have the resources Sage do to develop software, but I do understand quite a bit about tax and accounting, and I've been working in it many years. This is software we've built to try and deal with these problems, but despite the fact that it's what we call an interactive checklist system, it's not automated. You remember we spoke about GST as part of a parity check. Now, I employ a lot of people who work from home. That's part of the system design we have, and we use the software to achieve some of those outcomes. So, for example, you do a job, in this case tax or business, and there's a series of checklists. And I'm going to take you straight to the GST area. So what's happening is, imagine someone at home doing this. Now, what we're talking about is you're automating some of these procedures. So GST reconciliation and review. Now let's look at the GST problem account checklist. Now this is a manual checklist, albeit using our interactive prompts, that in my view is fairly easily automated. Why wouldn't you do this? For example, in the automation procedure for checking a BAS, it would say parity check would be a bank fee less than $20, does it have GST on it? Unlikely that it should. Check. Insurance bills. If you're paying for insurance, the stamp duty, it shouldn't be 100% GST. You can check. Right? Parity check will just simply bring up the transaction and says this is an insurance bill, it's got 10% GST, it probably should be less than that. Check. Now it's up to the user then to do it. It's providing an accounting function. It takes you to another level. Rental property expenses. If you've identified rental income in a P&L and there are expenses connected with rates or taxes or things like that, should they have GST on them? Warnings. And you can see the list that we go through here. Classic GST to drawings. You see this all the time, where we're reminding our staff to check that a client hasn't put GST on an expense, shifted it to drawings, and the GST code's still stuck in there. Now these checks are easily automated, in my opinion. It's not hard to take it to that level. We also use spreadsheets for bits and pieces. Some of these things the account still has to do. For example, if you've got a change in registration for GST, you will end up needing an adjustment calculator. Now, this is an example where the accountant has to get involved. So we've got spreadsheets here where you enter in the values. It's all very complicated. That's tax, okay? Now, you can't automate this, but at least you're doing a lot more of it and allowing the accountant to concentrate on that. We have GST logic checks, which is part of what I'm talking about in terms of when you know how you do a BAS, you ask certain key questions. You can we do this by asking the accountant to fill this in, but you can automate this where it will put this data in and then say, your GST doesn't look quite right, you might want to review. Now there's got to be limits to this, but that's what I mean by automation of parity checking, where you're almost trying to bring an accounting function into the software. We then have our GST reconciliations, margin schemes here. So we have a GST reconciliation for a quarterly taxpayer. And again, there's no reason why this information can't form part of a reconciliation that's automated. So what we do in here, we put on all the BAS information, and then you have to put in what the sales and debtors and creditors are if you're a cash basis payer. And then you put in opening and closing balances, and you then get a GST cross-check. all of that can be automated. In other words, the software has it all in there. The only thing that's missing from this is the BAS information from the ATO, which you should have on your payments anyway. So it's a question of creating that sort of functionality so that you can see. Now, I know this is getting a little more advanced. This is how we do it. But to me, this is what software automation means as you start building these type of solutions. There are other things that we have to go through, bits and pieces. Anyway, I hope that highlights the point of how I see, as a firm like ours, how we see the accounting process. We use this tool here to do a lot of parity checking, because what I'm doing is designing systems for work-at-home accountants so that they have a very clear list of things they need to check and review from a tax law perspective. In my view, the accounting software from a Sage point of view is actually trying to automate the basic stuff, the bank rec, the GST review, the asset allocations, bits and pieces. There are checks. I think that's invaluable. And there's a lot of talk about this, if you read accounting forums and things like that, it's where it's all going. So I'm hoping this will give you some, as I said, some idea that I'm not just new to this. I'm very keen. I'm more than happy to put a bit of time into Sage. If you're interested in talking to me, I do want to use your software. I am concerned that you won't do this. In other words, it's not something you want to do. There's not enough accountants interested. I'm very worried that a lot of accountants are very much afraid of all this stuff because they think they're going to lose work, which means that people like me are not going to be heard, because companies like you are going to say, well, there's only 10 of us or 20 of us, no other accountants are interested in it. Why, I have no idea, but I'm hoping you get the point.